So when you did start your business and you started to grow, did you start to outgrow certain friendships along the way?
Yeah. So I'm technically a year into it now. I think it's difficult with the legacy ones because you still do have that value. You still have that history, that background. But I think in terms of how I have my day to day, it's quite difficult to then have a conversation with someone about something what I find so meaningless, and to then switch back into a mode where 16 hours a day, I'm on job. And then all of a sudden you're switching in between different things and it's hard to stay focused. And I think it's more just like the time allocation and what I can actually give to my friends I'm struggling with. And look, it's an ongoing struggle. I do think shedding friends, shedding even family is part of the process. You've been longer in the tooth with it than I have. How's your journey with it been?
For me personally, as I started to grow and start that journey of introspection, that's when I started to shed a lot of relationships. And what I've learned is that's okay. It's okay to outgrow your identity from 3 years ago. It's okay to move on from certain adult friendships. And once again, that's okay. You help scale a business to exit. And in that process, you grew a big team. My question is what's one communication habit that helps you get the best out of your team?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's like, it does lend itself quite well to like my leadership style. Like I was always in the trenches with the team. And I think having done so, not only do you build that natural respect with them, shoulder to shoulder in the trenches doing the hard work, but I also think they understand a lot of what you mean because you're going through the same experiences that they are. So my communication style isn't so much top heavy where I'm dictating by power and dictating by roles, and I've never really given titles much consideration. It's more, if I'm in there with you and we're learning the same thing, then we're all going to naturally grow. The team's going to grow, the business is going to grow. And I think I've always actually found myself bringing on team members that are just naturally quite curious. They're more than the experience side or more than, what a CV says on paper. What I want to know is like, what has that individual got their curiosity? How are they in terms of communication? Are they finding it difficult to open up to me? Because obviously as sort of a manager and being in a leadership position, you need to know your team inside out. You need to know when Sally's had a bad day or, when it's 32 degrees today, and how that affects team morale and all of the rest of it.
You went from being an employee to now being an entrepreneur. What's one mindset shift that you had to make to make that switch?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when I was an employee, I was in a sales role. And my salary was literally linked to the business growing. So my best interest was the business growing. So you almost treat it as a mini business within a bigger business. And I think that gave me a lot of understanding of how can I improve every single facet of this business, not just the sales and marketing side. How can I get the best out of the background, the delivery team, so that the results look better so we can market the results. And it's like a big ecosystem.
Tell me about the moment when you first decided, I want to start Vitara.
So I was actually working at a business. It was a startup. I'd just exited the old business, or that business had just been acquired. And I joined this new startup, but fundamentally it was stuck because the business model just didn't work. And they were just so resistant to change and to adapting to modern times. And so that startup had failed. And I was sitting at my desk and George, our friend, he sent me a voice note saying, I'm just on a walk, but I've got a good idea. Would you be in on it? I didn't even hesitate. I was just like, send me your idea. He sent it by WhatsApp. For context, George had obviously just bought a marketing agency himself. He had clients in the healthcare space. And it was similar sort of times that my wife, obviously Serena's a dentist, and she was between different clinics, different jobs. And so I was always scrutinizing like why that other clinic wasn't growing and why she wasn't happy in her role. And she was looking at different clinics, and it was interesting to see why another clinic was so great, how they were marketing themselves. And it all just felt like it converged to a point where the Vitara brand, the Vitara and what we were looking to do was a complete no-brainer, because I had the background from the healthcare side. We had the resource from the Crucible side, and I had my background from corporate coming in and scaling a business in the sales and marketing that was sort of bridging both of these two areas together. So Yeah, it's almost been a year Vitara has started.
If you could give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Honestly, it would be to just start straight away. I was putting off like the content side for so long. I actually had a YouTube channel I started when I was 18. So I'd just come back from Australia. I was playing cricket. Long story short, broke my shoulder, couldn't play any more. And I had 6 months before I started university. So I created a YouTube channel. I put maybe 6, 7 videos up there and I really enjoyed doing that. And then I started at university and then obviously, priorities change. But I just wish I'd carried on doing the content side and building that personal branding on the side. During my degree, there was also elements of the cryptocurrency. We were doing lectures on that, and this was before it got big. Again, I look back at that time and thought, why didn't I just start that back then? And then when I worked with Turvec, every year, George and I would have conversations where I would just say, it's probably time to start my own thing, but what does that look like? And I was putting that off again. And so I think like the core message on that for me and what my personality is like is just to stop thinking and just start the thing.
What's the number one thing that you look for when it comes to,
So honestly, even though Vitara is technically a marketing agency, we don't really refer to it as one. We're more of a sales and growth agency. And so when I have these conversations, the biggest red flag I always see is when the clinic owner doesn't consider what happens after a lead has landed. So quite often they say, here's our company, here's a budget, can you just go do your thing? And it's so difficult to get their buy-in because we can send leads all day. Anyone could send leads all day. They could spin up campaigns themselves and get leads coming in. But I think what my experience has given me and what my team's experience is everything behind what happens after the lead comes in, we are ruthlessly efficient in. So even if you're only getting 10 leads, I want all 10 of those to convert into paying patients. Whereas I don't want to play a volume game of 1,000 leads need to come in to close 10 patients, if that makes sense.
What's the one KPI that your ideal customer doesn't look at, which they should?
The conversion rate, lead to sales conversion rate. That for me is everything. Leads will always come in through the door. You can have 1,000 leads. If you're not able to close those, or you close those at a 1% rate and you get 10 patients coming in, you're wasting your own resource. You're wasting our time.
The clients that you've worked with who have been super successful, what's one thing that they did differently that the others didn't?
They looked at our whole mission and what we were looking to achieve. So a lot of my thinking goes beyond what just the simple marketing is. So what the content looks like, how the campaigns look in the marketing side. It's literally, what is your sales team doing? What are their KPIs? What are their metrics? What's the CRM they're using? And then beyond that, what do your clinicians do? So when a patient does come in and then almost ready to go, what's the conversations they're having? Because quite often I've seen clinicians that are great at what they do. They're just not great salespeople, and that's totally fine. But when you break down each chunk of that patient buying journey, you can identify every single metric that needs to be grown. So the successful clinic owners that come in know what our mission is there. It's not the ads, it's not the content, it's not the front end, but it's the understanding that our front end feeds the sales that feeds your clinical team, and vice versa. So what your clinical team tells us that's happening in practice today feeds the sales team in the middle, which then feeds the ads on the front. I've always said this phrase, and it's that the consultation needs to feel like a formality for the patient. If someone's getting in touch, if they're ready to go ahead for a treatment that the clinic is offering, they need to feel like the consultation they're going through in the process is just a formality. They're ready to go.
What's the number one reason that people don't buy?
I think in this day and age, it's quite interesting, and it's to do with a lack of trust. I think there's so much misinformation out there. There's so much genuine information out there that it feels like information overload. And then when you take it back to what is your spin of that information, it's massive, right? It's how does your personality align with the information that's out there? And people buy from people at the end of the day. And I think a lot of people forget this. It's that sales is always and going to always remain a human to human interaction. You can bring in as much AI as you want, but you can never replicate that human to human interaction. And fundamentally, I think if the trust is built as a foundation, and even more so in an industry like healthcare, then you'll be having better conversion rates, or your conversion rates will be higher.
Why do most ad campaigns fail?
So in healthcare, I can tell you it's mostly the content, and it's so easy to replicate what your competitor is doing down the road and literally do the exact same content, but it's not that clinic story. It's not that clinician's background. It's not the clinician's experience. And so, yes, you can start your campaigns with the generic content that is working quite well across the industry, and that will be completely fine. And for 3 months, it will work. We've found so often that from month 3, it always falls off a cliff. And that's because the content that's converting, and Sally goes in and she pays for the treatment at the end. You need to understand more on a psychological level what actually made Sally a patient. What emotional trigger was it? You take that learning and you put it back into the marketing on the front end, so it answers that objection from the beginning. Again, to go back to the phrase I love saying, which is the consultation should just feel like a formality. So if you're answering the objections right at the beginning, chances are the patients have already built that trust during the patient buying journey. When they arrive in clinic, they're pre-sold and they're ready to go.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
So over the next few years, there's some clients that we're working with. I want them to succeed so badly. I want them to open up location 3, 4, 5, even go international in some cases. For me personally, beyond Vitara, it's a dental clinic. We're looking to, my wife and I are looking to buy a dental clinic, or we were in the past, and that fell through. And so it's a good mix of what I'm doing with Vitara, the sales and marketing side, is we can literally take that proven system, open up a dental practice, and I know it will be the best one in the local area based on everything that I'm going through right now. Again, from my wife's side, that's brilliant. She's the best dentist I've known, and I can see with even all the clinics that we work with. Beyond that, it's classic growing a family, growing, or constantly growing, always being better. Another marathon ticked off, ideally, maybe a half Ironman once the shoulder's fixed. So your background is around communication and presentation style. Why is the first 30 seconds so important?
Most people start with jargon. What you really should start with is something which captures attention. There's 3 ways you can really do that. Number 1, tell a joke. You got to be funny though. You've actually got to be funny, okay? Number 2 is tell a story. And the key here is telling a story that makes people feel significant versus making yourself look significant.
Yeah.
And the third is in
It's interesting about that authority piece. I think a lot of people create fake substance when they're having interactions with new people, and it's not genuine to themselves. And I can smell an inauthentic person off miles away, right? And during those interactions, it's so obvious when someone's trying to be someone they're not. So a lot of clinicians are great at what they do, but they're ineffective communicators. How do you think they should go about improving that?
there's really one thing that somebody needs to do to become a more impactful communicator. The challenge is most people won't do it. When you become more comfortable in your own skin, you become more potent as a communicator. So what that really leads to is somebody thinking, how do I become more comfortable in my own skin? Here's my truth. The depth of the relationship that you have with yourself is directly correlated to the depth of the relationship you have with others.